So I'm Allison Matizik. I'm the VP of Enterprise Sales here at Ellevate, and I'm joined by our co-host, Joanna Polgarin, our Senior Program Manager. I want to give a special shout out to our corporate partners, Freddie Mac, Rollins, Zendesk, Hogan Lovells are all represented here, as well as a special warm welcome to our chapter leaders. For those of you who are new, this is a safe, confidential space, and we encourage participation with your video on. We're going to cover and talk about finding your zone of genius today, and it's extra special because our guest expert, Sophia Pertuz, is also the host of our new Holding Space Forum for the Hispanic, Latina, and Latinx community, which will be meeting, I believe, every Tuesday at 5 p.m. So I encourage all of you to join her there on Tuesday, starting September 20th, I believe. And Sophia is also the managing director for diversity, equity, and inclusion for the Billie Jean King Enterprises and founder of Mainstream Insights. So a few other housekeeping things before we get started. We are offering 20% off Pro and Exec access this month with code Pumpkin Spice at checkout. I've yet to buy my pumpkin spice latte. I'm holding out a little longer. It's still summer in my mind. But as I say to my son all the time, sharing is caring. So please share, these opportunities with your network. And today we're going to learn about how connecting your values helps you better focus on your career path, strategies for determining how your strengths can shine a light on your zone of genius, and how to recognize your own brilliance and be strategic about sharing it with others. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sophia, and thanks so much for being here.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. And just a quick clarification on the holding space. I think it's every third Tuesday. I know we would have plenty to say every Tuesday. Honestly, I think I would totally know. But can everyone see my screen? Awesome. So I was thinking about this topic for a long time. I read the book, The Big Leap, recently by Gay Hendricks, and I hadn't found it before, but I had already just felt the concept of a zone of genius. So the things that you are in your zone when you're doing them, that time is not even just passing, it's flowing. So I'm going to go over that in detail, but I just wanted to tell you a little bit about me, and I would love to connect with some of you on LinkedIn. I'll put the link in the chat. But education, as you can see, I've been part of many organizations over my life. I was in higher education for 25 years. Then I was in a nonprofit organization, the JED Foundation. I got recruited out of higher ed. I took the big leap, leaving something that I was comfortable with for 25 years. I have a PhD in higher education management, leadership, and policy. I thought I was going to be president someday, or at least my immigrant mother thought I was already. She went to third grade and was always like, "You're not president yet?" "Oh, you're not president." In Spanish, of course, because I'm from Dominican Republic. So as you see my flag here, I grew up in the Bronx. So there were so many opportunities that came my way because of education. So I dedicated half my life at this point to higher ed. I took the leap and said, okay, I think I have transferable skills. I know I can be the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at the JED Foundation, a nonprofit focused on the protection of emotional health and suicide prevention for young people. I did do that. And I did find a little bit of my zone of genius there, just being able to really think about strategy, how to think about all the work we were doing in a way that thought about equitable implementation. So beyond just the check boxes of diversity. Then something happened in 2020 where I found even more of my zone of genius when I was tapped by organizations that were just asking me questions about, what do I think about mental health and the connection to diversity and inclusion? What are some ways they can enter the conversation? And as we know, we were in the middle of a pandemic. We were in the middle of a racial reckoning. We were also in the middle of just trying to figure out how to maintain our own equilibrium and sanity while the world was changing around us so much with so much uncertainty. So again, I took one more leap of faith, and I keep doing it. I have more leap of faith to take when I joined the Billie Jean King Enterprises in 2021. That was a moment of, I was running my own business, Mainstream Insight, while working at the JED Foundation, and decided to go part-time. I was just arranging my life in a way that I could spend more time on the stuff I love to do. Can you imagine what that's like? to be able to do that. So I was trying to do that more. So I was pitching to Billie Jean King Enterprises, and they were like, well, why don't you work full time for us? And I took one more leap of faith. So that's enough about me. I'll go right into the topic and would love to talk more with anyone who's interested. I have so many different credentials at this point. I have a PhD. I'm certified in Society for Human Resources. I just got certified as an executive coach recently with the International Coaching Federation. And yet, none of those credentials matter if you're not using them or being able to spend the time doing the things that matter and that the work you do day to day feels like it's meaningful. So that's why I thought it was important to do this topic. And I had all my graduation pictures and I left out my kindergarten ones. I thought I'd give you a treat here and you can laugh a little that my little thing is backwards. But anyway, that's kindergarten for me, which is my foundation. So, what motivates me and why I think it's so important for us as women to support each other and think about how we can bring each other up, not just to spend the time in the things that matter and help us connect to our geniuses, but it's sometimes about the bottom line and how we can make sure we are all moving each other forward because this has got to stop. I know you probably heard about these equal pay days and how by the time we get to October is when Latinas, for example, that's the extreme, catch up in the United States to a white male full-time salary in terms of our salary rates. And there's different numbers you might find. Some say 55%, some say 58%. Either way, we know we're behind in terms of that, bringing us up to speed. I say Latina because I happen to have hold that identity, but of course, women in general. And then you see all the different dates here. And it's different every year, but I thought I'd put this one in front of me because I'm not just motivated by money. I'm motivated by opportunity and making sure that all of us are able to find what is our calling, be paid for it, be well compensated for it. But it's money where you get those choices to spend the time doing the things that matter to you. So I hope that I don't come off as it's just about the money because it's not. So here's that book in case you want to listen to it. You can get it free from your library. You can listen to it. That's what I did on Hoopla. And it's a great read. Just if you're having a moment where you're making some big decisions and you're trying to figure out, can I really take a leap right now? What do I need to do to prepare myself for what's next? So to explain the zone of genius, what is this? So I'll start from the bottom up. So your zone of incompetence, you could probably guess. You're not great at it. It takes a lot more effort. It might even be things you have to do, but you just know that if you could hand it off to somebody else, you would prefer that. And it might be better because you're just not getting feedback that's positive about that thing. So think about that thing that you do that you're just like, I'm not that great at it. And that's okay. Others can do this work better than you. Sometimes it's okay to delegate some things. Then you have the zone of competence. You can do this work. It does take some effort. You do it as well as others. Just like everybody else, you're pretty average in this thing that you do. But it doesn't feel satisfying. You prefer not to do it if possible, and others can be just as good. Your zone of excellence, you're great at this work. You consistently get great feedback. People want you to do more of this. But again, you're still not having your heart sing over this thing that you're doing. So think about the work that you're doing now. You've been promoted for it, probably. You've won awards for it, but it's still not bringing you your satisfaction in life. So let's get into the zone of genius. This is when your work seems effortlessly. You ever work on something and the time just flows? It doesn't just fly, it flows because you're just like, you look up and you're like, wow, was that even work? Deep inside, you know, it's your calling. You draw upon your special gifts. Someone else sometimes has to point it out to you, like, you're good at this, right? Because sometimes it's not the thing that you're actually being paid for right now. So it draws on your special gifts and it rewards you beyond compensation. So you're like, oh no, I would do this for free. But what if you can take the thing that you're really gifted at and turn it into something that will compensate you so that you can spend your time on that? So that's for you to really think about. And this is the way that I think about the talents, skills, and strengths that make up your zone of genius. So sometimes you have to figure that out. And sometimes you need the credential that gets you in the door to do more of that, right? Sometimes you need more training to give you the skills to do more of the thing that you want to spend time on. Sometimes you just have to find what your strengths are. And that means seeing an executive coach or someone that can just point it out for you, or a best friend that's very honest with you and can just work with you to think about how do you usually spend your time? Think about work. Do you go to certain things first? because you love to do them, but you don't do the hard thing because you're like, I either don't, I'm not excited about it, I don't like it, or I just know I'm not good at it, so I'm just going to try and avoid it. But unfortunately, that doesn't work out well. But that's pretty much how the zone of genius works. So these are questions for you to think about now. For those of you who need some time to reflect, these are the questions you're gonna talk about in the breakout. So what do I most love to do? What work do I do that doesn't seem like work? In my work, what produces the highest ratio of abundance and satisfaction of time spent? That when you do it, someone else looks at it and says, how did you do that? Do you ever have those things that you work on that somebody else just can't figure out what's your genius? They're like, that's amazing, because they just can't, it's not their zone of genius. So they can't imagine how you got it done. So it feels like magic. What is my unique ability? So what is the thing that you can bring to the table that other people have even told you, like, if you're not in the room, we're not getting it done? I'm sure there's at least a couple of things that you work on that feels like that for you. But here's what gets in the way. And when you wonder, like, what is your zone of genius? And I'm not watching the chat, so if there's something, please, maybe unmute, and happy to answer any questions. But the idea here is the upper limit problem. So Hendricks talks about you don't think you deserve to be wildly successful, so you avoid those things. Or when people tell you you're really good at it, you're like, no, you do things to kind of deflect and not accept your genius. There's a ceiling to how happy you allow yourself to be. So you start sabotaging yourself, and you do things that messes you up. You miss a deadline. You wait till the last minute to work on something because you're kind of afraid of that genius, and you don't want to seem like you're too much. Sometimes you might be told at work, and you have other people in your life who actually put you in your place and tell you that, and you accept that, and you say, okay, I'll tone it down because I don't want other people to look. So some of the typical ways that it shows up is worrying too much. So worrying about the things you cannot control, and just really letting that get in the way of actually spending time being happy with something. The other thing is blame or criticism in your relationships. And in the book, it goes into more detail. We're trying to keep this under a certain time. But blame and criticism, spending time on the things that are not about you, and kind of projecting out to other people what's going on, because you somehow don't want to see the greatness in yourself. Again, I said deflecting. Somebody gives you that compliment, and they're like, it looks like magic. How did you get that done? Oh, no. It's fine. I spent the time. I stayed up all night doing it. And it's okay if you spent all night doing it because the time flowed and you loved it. But you don't need to tell somebody that, right? But you deflect that and give it a reason. No, it can't just be because I'm a genius at this. It's because I spent extra time. I did this, I did that to get it done. Squabbling. You start getting into arguments with people. And he speaks to it from relationships where things are going so well, and then when things feel like they're going too well, you find a reason to fight about it or argue about it. Another one that I didn't even realize that I didn't think about, and I saw it in me, is getting sick or getting hurt. Just when things are going just as planned and you're on track, you somehow get a headache, you get hurt, you start feeling sluggish, and that's your body kind of like upper limiting yourself. The other one is hiding significant feelings. When you're supposed to be doing something else, but you wait a long time to really admit that to yourself or find the way to really see it and figure out what actions you need to take to get there. And then the final two, integrity breach. So not keeping agreements, taking on things that you probably should not, that are going to get in the way of you spending the time on what matters most to you. So not being able to say no and saying yes to yourself, not keeping that agreement when you say, I'm not going to take that on again. When they ask me to do that thing I don't like, I'm not going to say yes, and then you say yes anyway. That's not keeping an agreement with yourself. And then not speaking truths to relevant people. So instead of speaking to people about the things that are bothering you at work, at home, in your personal relationships, you talk to other people about it. That's out of integrity too, but really not addressing the things that you probably should. So with the upper limit problems, I'll put this graphic because when I found it, I said, this explains it all. So it's like, you do know that nobody's keeping you from that in that box, right? And the little figure's like, wait, what? Because it is our own moments of upper limiting that keeps us from finding our zone of genius. So here are the questions. You can use these in the breakout if you want. I have the other ones that will repeat and put it on the screen again. But the idea of eliminating your upper limit problem is the most important part of finding your zone of genius. So you ask yourself, Am I willing to increase the amount of time every day that I feel good inside? Am I willing to increase how long my whole life goes well? Not everything needs to be a disaster. And there are some people who thrive on things not going well and are always complaining. You know, those people, you're like, can you just cut? Can you never get a break, huh? And it's like, no, sometimes some people just thrive on that kind of negativity all the time. And then the final question is, am I willing to feel good and have my life go well all the time? Because I think that is possible. And when I was seeing the examples in the book, I was like, oh, wow, I've seen this in myself where I've done it. But I like to say we have to give each other and ourselves grace because we're all in our own journey. And I love the butterfly um, metaphor because I think some of us are in a cocoon. Even if you're in great careers, you're in a great job, but somehow you're not finding that it's in your zone of genius. So you're in your cocoon trying to just work on ways to get out of it, work on ways to build those wings to really fly when you're ready. Maybe you're not ready right now. Maybe you need that extra credential to give you that extra boost. Maybe you need someone to work it out with you. Maybe you need a really great mentor, supervisor, sponsor who can just spend that time to bring you forward in the most positive ways, especially if you're hesitant about it and you're scared. And I wouldn't be here in a group like this if I didn't truly believe that we can all support each other along the way. I mentioned, you know, getting professional help to bring out what you need. Sometimes you need a professional network like this that can really help you see things that you may not see. One of the definitions of the zone of genius was sometimes you don't even realize it. You know what you're good at, but sometimes you do need someone else to point it out to you, give you that compliment, as long as you're not deflecting it back to the upper limiting. And this was one quote that was in the book that I thought was just really great by Fritz Perls. Fear is excitement without the breath. It's the same neurological effect when you're afraid to do something versus when you're really excited and there's something about the thing that you're about to do, the big leap you're about to take that's bringing you some kind of inner joy, but you're not sure how to receive it. So that's the end, and I'm going to put the genius questions back up, but I would love to connect with anyone who wants to continue the conversation. I wish we had a lot more time, but I definitely want you to have breakout time to really think about it and would love to answer any questions. And I'll come back at the end too to answer questions you have. But these were the questions. Back to your zone of genius. What do I most love to do? And I hope that you gave it some thought since I presented them first and had some time to think about it. What work do I do that doesn't even feel like work? In my work, what produces the highest ratio of abundance and satisfaction of the time spent? And then finally, what is my unique ability? What is the thing that you bring to the table that when you're in the room, people are like, yeah, you need to do this. This is Sophia's thing. This is Jillian's thing. This is Anne's thing, because they are so good at it and they know that that's your zone of genius. So I will stop there so that we can have some time for breakouts.
Awesome, Sophia. Thank you. So much to think about. Anyone have questions before we go into breakouts? I know we'll have a little time, but if you have anything on your mind now before we go in, feel free to speak up. Or
Don't be shy. You can also put it in the chat if you want to ask a question privately. You can do that too, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm trying to see in the chat if I see anything.
So we'll stay in the breakout rooms for about, I think 30 minutes or so. And this is where, you know, the magic happens. There's not an Ellevate facilitator in the breakout, but you all know to do some light introductions and use these as some prompts. Great questions to think about. And we'll come back probably in about 25 minutes or so.